It's Friday, August 28th. Let's talk PlayStation. So it's really not that big of a news week. Not a whole lot going on. I mean, there is a whole lot going on, but not, the kind of news stories that we'll typically talk about on LTPS. But, the big thing this past week is that, Until Dawn just came out, big PS4 exclusive, from Supermassive Games. And then, of course, the review scores are all coming out for Metal Gear Solid 5, and everyone's getting super pumped up about that. The Black Ops 3 beta and everything's going on. So it's mostly just game stuff, which is really important. So, again, not really a whole lot of big news stories to talk about, but there's still some I want to talk to you guys about, which is Sony announced another new date for another conference that they're having, their Pre TGS Conference. So this is actually going to be happening September 15th in Tokyo. They do a Pre TGS show, then they do a TGS show, and in the past there's you expect the TGS show to be pretty big, obviously bigger than the Pre TGS show, but there's been a past few pre-TGS shows where Sony has been announcing more things at pre-TGS rather than the actual TGS conference, which is a little weird, but since that's been the case the past few years, you might want to watch out for this event. It'll be about an hour and a half long, so Sony will possibly announce some big stuff. Who knows? But we'll talk about that more once we actually get closer to that date. But speaking of Until Dawn, one thing that did happen with the actual release of the game is that people that were streaming the game on Twitch, they're not able to archive the game. And of course, archiving on Twitch means that you save the stream to be viewed later by people that possibly missed the stream or whatnot. You can't archive streams of Until Dawn, and it turns out Twitch actually updated, let people knew about this, which is that this is actually Sony's doing. They said it's the publisher's responsibility, and they're the ones that are blocking the archiving of the stream. And in this case, the publisher is Sony. So Sony is purposely blocking people from archiving streams of Until Dawn. And this kind of goes into a number of things. I think one thing immediately is that this isn't entirely insane. This isn't sort of an unusual move for Sony, especially since when you look at the fact that my elbow really itches. Especially when you look at the fact that with SharePlay on PlayStation 4, Sony was very open about the fact that they are giving publishers the responsibility and the access and control to let the publishers and developers can basically block certain scenes in the game or block certain moments in the game that you can or cannot SharePlay and stuff like that. So publishers have the ability to even as early as the PS4's launch, publishers have had the ability to block certain scenes in terms of actually sharing gameplay with the share button or capturing a screenshot and things like that. So Sony has given the tools to basically say, we'll let you do all this sharing stuff, all this streaming stuff, but we do have to have a little drawed line here and give the developers and publishers a little bit of control over their games. And with Until Dawn, it makes a lot of sense because it's a very story driven game, based on a big a bunch of plot points and things like that. So it makes sense that Sony doesn't want to let people just completely ruin the game for everybody else in the sense by letting people go and watch it. And I think the big thing here is that a lot of people will look at this and go, okay, well, why doesn't Sony also issue content ID claims on YouTube or something like that? They're not stopping archived streams of Until Dawn from people that are using third-party recording equipment and not just Sony's only able to block directly PS4 streaming. So but that's the thing, is that that's what I'm getting at, is that they're only blocking it in terms of what they can actually do. Sony, in the past and so far, has not been very aggressive in terms of really halting gameplay on online and things like that. They've been very so far kind of straightforward in saying you can do it or whatnot. They haven't exactly frowned upon it, and again with PS4, they're kind of pioneering that in a sense where they're encouraging it with the share button and streaming and share playing and all that. But they do have a little sense of control, and they're controlling that one little portion that they are allowed to do, which I think is kind of fair. So we've been getting some trailers for the Uncharted Collection coming out in October, and it's looking really, really great. And Digital Foundry recently did a pretty hefty analysis on the recent footage that we've gotten of the game, and have really given us a whole lot of extra details about just how good this thing looks, and that it's not just a little remaster, and just how much extra detail has gone into actually prettying up the Uncharted games. Of course, the character models from Uncharted Drake's Fortune are pretty bland and pretty dated at this point. They're saying that the character model for Nathan Drake and character models in general in the game are more coherent throughout all three games. So not only bringing 1 and 2 up to speed with 3's visuals, but just all around making the games consistent visually. Foliage and sort of texture detail and everything has been entirely refined and everything like that. Actual detail and foreshadowing has just been increased across the board. Overall, like a real fine-tuned remaster, which really just shows how good Blue Point Games is at doing these kind of jobs. Blue Point Games now has done a number of ports and remasters, and they do just such a fantastic job. And this kind of shows what goes into like work ethic and things like that, and the reputation developers can have and things like that. We've looked at a number of ports that have been released throughout the past few years, or remasters and things like that. I just got an email, and you always see like, oh, so and so developers working on it, or so and so developers porting it. Look at their past stuff. Like, it really shows like this is just a really good example of showing like it really depends on the developer that's handling a certain project, and it just makes me super excited even more for the Uncharted Collection. So it was an email from PayPal, and it's a receipt for my payment to Hulu, because I do watch a lot of Hulu. Anyway, moving into the next topic, let's talk about some Hideo Kojima. Of course, he's going to be releasing a pretty big game soon. It's reviewing fairly well, I guess you could say. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. One thing that I want to talk about, since we don't have a whole lot to talk about here, is he tweeted recently that he's going to be making games for the rest of his life. This guy's already 52 years old. He recently had his birthday. My God, we don't often talk about, Hideo Kojima or certain figures in games and things like that, which I'm starting to realize is kind of like one of the things that we probably should be doing more often, because often we're on this YouTube channel and we talk about so many different things within the industry, whether it's developers and publishers and how they operate, and multi-million selling games and big budget video games, independent developers and things like that, all that businessy stuff, but we never talk about certain figures. And Hideo Kojima is just, I'm not even going to get really into it. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but realistically, like, I admire somebody that is that old and is that committed to their craft, and that craft, of course, being video games. That's what's most relevant here. And if, I'm not even going to do Let's Talk PlayStation, let's just do fucking Let's Talk anything here, which is, I have so much respect for anybody that does that, whether, no matter what their craft is, whether they're a chef and they've dedicated their life to cooking, anything they could possibly dream of, and just trying to, build a multi-million-dollar restaurant that's super successful and all that, an architect that just craves and slaves over creating a giant, utopian building or whatever the fuck he's trying to do, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I have such great appreciation and a profound respect for people that do that stuff. And with Hideo, I mean, yeah, it's video games. The guy's been doing it for how long? He's so good at it. And it kind of goes into like some of those reports where, and we don't know if these are like, super, we don't know if they're real or not. There's only so much truth you can really say, and how much you can take for granted here. But there's been, a number of reports saying that Hideo sometimes is pretty, in terms of his work ethic, very sort of heavy-handed. He wants this done, he wants that done. He'll sometimes spend a lot of excess money and using the budget. Like, he spends over the budget for most of his games, and of course it turns out being worth it more often than not. But he'll spend all this money on something, turns out it doesn't work, then he decides, you know what, this isn't good enough, I'll do something else. Kind of a perfectionist in a sense. I just love it, man. Absolutely love it. And for our last news story, I thought we'd talk about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're getting a bunch of new details about it, and that's what's alarming about this, and which I'll get to in a second. But basically, the game's producer, Yoshinori Kitase, was talking to Famitsu Magazine, and he said a couple of interesting quotes, which I'm going to read to you right now. He said, "We're starting to see the visual direction. On the other hand, we're currently working out the battle system and such through trial and error. Since there's a possibility that the command battle system of the old days might not work today, we're thinking about what kind of direction we can take it. Normally, when you do a remake, it becomes somewhere along the lines of a familiar action RPG, so we're looking at how we can put out something like Final Fantasy VII while still surprising players. Please don't ask about how far into development we are," and such, laughs. And that's what's really funny. I mean, I expected him to say something like, please don't ask us how far in development we are. I think it's fair to say he definitely wants time on this. The whole team wants time to actually get this thing right and release it properly and things like that. And we, with us, with gamers and the general media and public that want to know how far along the development is of the game, and with Square Enix's reputation for how long they take with certain games and things like that, we're all wondering just when are we going to get this thing. And I myself am sitting here thinking, like, we probably got a long ways to go before we actually see this this thing, but I'm actually surprised at what he said earlier, which is that they have sort of a visual direction already starting. That actually surprised the hell out of me. I'm shocked that they're actually that kind of deep into the game. I would have figured that this would have been one of those things where, and this seems like the case whenever Square Enix announces a game, is that they'll announce a game and all they have is a trailer. It's basically that's all they did, is that they made a trailer and then said, okay, now let's show the trailer. We've made a trailer for an idea. Now let's start working on the game, rather than actually, what should be done, which is work on the game for 1, 2, 3+ years, however long it takes to get something that actually runs and looks decent, and then you have an idea of the fact that this game's actually going to come out soon, and that it's actually going to look good, and things like that, and then you can show the public that, and then say, hey, and the game comes out in like a year or two. But I'm actually shocked that they are this far in, which, you're asking yourself, well, how far is this far in? And I don't know that for a fact. It's just one of those things where I was looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, like, this game probably is just not even anywhere close to being started, let alone having a visual direction so far. So I'm just genuinely surprised that they're actually much further along than I thought they were. Now, I mean, keep in mind, I'm not saying like they're super far along. I'm sure they still have tons of work to do. But like, I thought they were gonna start here, but they're really here. But for the game to be finished and released, they need to be like here. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just surprised that they actually are a little further ahead than I thought. Anyway, those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Yeah, like I said, not really a whole lot going on. In terms of like anything else, I mean, there's a PSN sale. They're having a retro sale right now. PS3, PS4, PS Vita. A bunch of games are on sale. I think the one I saw that I thought was really good was Beyond Two Souls is on there for like $8 now. Totally worth it. Even if you are like kind of iffy about that game, it's $8. Give that game a shot. Anyway, this week's topic for Ryan on Gaming was local multiplayer, split screen. What happened to that? We don't really see a whole lot of that nowadays. Why is it gone? Definitely a business reason for that. If you want to get a little into that discussion, I suggest you check that out. Jack Part 6 is steamrolling ahead. It's just awesome. We're paving a road, and the road is leading to the end of Jack 2. Actually, it's funny because we're not really that far along at all. I was thinking to myself, I recorded a few more parts the other night. I was thinking to myself, like, man, we still got a pretty decent amount of time, a decent amount of this game left to go. So if you've been watching that, yeah, we got a hell of a ride to go still. And I'll tell you something, it doesn't get any better in terms of me actually playing the game. Oh man, more deaths. It's just, I'll put it that way. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday. I really hope this isn't one of those situations where I upload this and then, during the day Friday, a whole bunch of hot PlayStation news comes out, because I record these technically like Friday morning or like Thursday night, and then get them ready for Friday morning for everybody to watch. But then sometimes on a Friday, there's all this hot PlayStation news that's just getting dropped because it's hot. That's what they do, right? They say drop it like it's hot. Snoop Dogg taught me that one, man.